rather large handbag, and she would take out a little leather purse and she would unzip it and feed me wine gums as I drew. And I remember thinking, that's what I want to do when I grow up. I want to draw pictures and be fed wine gums. My favorite childhood memory. The other childhood memory I have is less edifying, and it was a memory of school dinners. And we had very fearsome dinner ladies at my school who insisted they would invigilate over school dinners, and they would insist that we ate everything on our plates. It was that was the era. And I used to dread Wednesday lunchtimes because we often had stewed prunes and custard for pudding. And I just didn't really hated the prunes. And so what I used to do is I used to sit looking at the dinner ladies. When their attention sort of wavered, I would just quickly pick up one of the stewed prunes, slip it in my trouser pocket. And I would do this during the course of the dinner time. At the end of it, I would have like 3 stewed prunes in one pocket, 3 stewed prunes in the other. And then I would show the dinner lady my empty plate. They'd say, that's fine. I'd be able to leave. And then just very quietly, once outside, I'd go over to the flower beds at the corner of the school playground and just drop my stewed prunes into the foliage where no one could see. And so that's an abiding memory. And I saw a film when I was a child called The Great Escape, which was the film of POW, prisoners of war in Germany. And in the film, they were tunneling out of the camp, and they would keep soil in their pockets and then just drop the soil into the flower beds. And it reminded me of stewed prunes. So I would like to read you my the first poem I ever wrote, and it is called The Great Escape. Now in the quiet of the studio at the bottom of the garden, I remind myself of the unforgiving church pews, my father's endless sermons, and the wine gums bestowed on me by Mrs. Stock like a benediction, of the hot tears damming behind my eyes on the first day of school when my mother let go of my hand, and how, an hour later, head below the tabletop, I secretly wept. Of the stewed prunes smuggled out from under the vigilance of the dinner ladies in the pockets of my trousers and dropped secretly into the flower beds as, like a prisoner of Stalag Luft, I planned my escape. And I think that, in a nutshell, is my career. My career is an escape. It's an escape into another world, an imaginary world, a world that I can picture and I can draw. We are living in extraordinary times, aren't we? And my son, Jack, I remember a few months ago, we were in the midst of lockdown. He was very angry about the conditions in which we were sort of, having to make do with all the restrictions. And he was also getting very, very upset about the politics of the situation, about Trump and Black Lives, the Black Lives Matter campaign, and the injustices in society. And as a young man, Jack is a filmmaking student from studying at Manchester Art School. And he was just very, very angry about what he saw going on in the world. And it was a wonderful sort of young man's anger at the injustices that he saw. And he said, Dad, I just feel like going out and smashing windows and sort of, burning things, burning cars, that sort of thing. And I thought, oh my goodness, Jack, don't do that. That as a parent sort of worried me. I applauded his sort of activism, but felt, a little bit worried about, direct action. And so very much as a reaction to the conversation I had with Jack, I wrote this poem. And it is a poem that comes out of lockdown and features in this book, Poems to Save the World With, which is an anthology that I compiled during lockdown. And one of the sections is actually called Lockdown and contains lots of sort of lockdown poems. And this is a poem I wrote for my son, Jack, to prevent him going out and burning cars and smashing windows. And I think it's also a poem for Rupert Murdoch. It's called This is an Incitement. Don't settle into inertia as the ash falls on your head and shoulders, soft and ankle deep at your feet. Take up your pens and brushes and make art. The ancient dragons of greed, coiled tight around their hoards, don't understand art. But the snake oil minions, who whisper in their ears as they sleep, they fear it. Art can capture the souls they bought and paid for. If you want to slay dragons, make art. I hope Jack will go on and make art. He's writing his dissertation at the moment, but I think after that, I hope he will go on and make art. Lockdown for all of us has been a strange time, and it's been a time where I suppose we've all been able to read, maybe sort of brush up on our crafts and our baking and all sorts of rather wonderful mindful activities. And it was during lockdown, it was in May, I remember one of those fantastic full moons. It might have been called a super moon. And I remember actually going out into the garden and sitting. It was late at night, everyone else had gone to bed, and I just sort of went outside and I saw this amazing full moon in my garden in Brighton. And I sort of sat down and just looked up at the moon, this great full moon, and it seemed to be a sort of perfect sort of reflective moment in this sort of world that had been locked down, this quiet, strange world. And I was looking up at this great big glowing moon, and I thought about where we were at. And then I'd left the back door open, and my son Will obviously had come down wandering, to get a sort of something from the kitchen, late at night, and saw the back door open and thought, hang on a minute, have we got burglars or something? And he came out and just found me sort of sitting in the garden looking at this moon. And so the next morning, I wrote a poem about it. And this is the poem in Poems to Save the World With I wrote, and it's called Lockdown. I sat beneath the May moon last night and missed my life. In silver and shadow, with a distant trundling of trains going nowhere. There was a muted tranquility in sitting in the midnight garden, my lockdown house silent and sleeping behind me. Then you came down the stairs, and noticing the open door, stepped out to join me in the moonlight. "Oh, it's you, Dad," you said, smiling. And suddenly, I was falling away into empty darkness, mourning the life you were missing so bravely. And I think that encapsulates the way that I feel about the effects that the lockdown has had on not my generation, but my children's generation, 20-somethings, 30-somethings who are attempting to carry on, attempting to live their lives as bravely as they possibly can, and they have been amazingly brave. And it's a challenge I don't think that any generation has quite sort of faced in this sort of existential way for many years. So that was my poem, I think, really in empathy with what they're going through. As far as I'm concerned, I'm old and past it and taken to sort of sitting in the garden looking at the full moon, but it's the younger generation that I worry for. So I wrote a poem for my son Jack, and I wrote a poem for my son Will, and my daughter Katie said to me, "Dad, you haven't written me a poem." And I suddenly realised I hadn't. I hadn't written Katie a poem, and that made me feel a little bit sort of awkward. And I sort of thought, yes, I really should write my daughter a poem. My daughter is a very forthright. I think she's got the soul of a critic. She's always been quite sort of forthright in her sort of criticism of my work. She really does tell me what she thinks. She doesn't hold back, even though sometimes I wish she would. And even as a small girl, she was always very sort of direct in her comments. And so I was thinking about this, and I remembered back in Katie's childhood, I remember her sort of coming into my studio one day, and this is a very quick sort of sketch of my studio. Now, this is where I work in Brighton. It's a coach house, a converted coach house. I converted it into a studio, and this is where I work. It's got some skylights and it's got some double doors. It's where the coach would go in, and there's a sort of front door here and two windows, and it's a perfect sort of building to be converted into an artist studios. It works well, and there are some little steps. And Viv has come down, visited me here, and has seen my studio. And I really hope that once we're on the other side of the extraordinary sort of lockdown restrictions, that Viv can come and visit me again down in Brighton. My house is at the in the distance, and then my studio is sort of screened by trees, and I walk down my garden path and in through the front door of my studio, and this is where I work. And I remember Katie, as a young girl, coming down and visiting me in my studio one day and having a look at what I was working on, and that memory sparked a poem, and I would like to read you the poem I wrote for my daughter Katie, and it's called The Illustrator, because Katie is now illustrating poetry as we speak. She's an illustrator, and she's just had a wonderful commission to illustrate some poems by A.F. Harold, and she's got another illustration project she's working on at the moment, also poetry. And this is called The Illustrator for Katie. I don't know how you can be bothered, daughter, unknowable to your father, but so close to me that I feel the jolts of recognition in the sinuous line that picks out the characters you draw. The way, as a child, you always stared at the world, the same way my mother told me I stared. Your temper, your tissue-thin esteem, your concentration when the art takes over. I recognize all these in myself. As a young girl, you came into my studio and stared hard at the meticulous illustration on my drawing board. My struggle to realize the vision in my mind, a struggle I see now in you as you work. How proudly I explained my painstaking method as you stared. Struck dumb, I imagine, by your father's genius. This took me ages, I said. This cross-hatching, these highlights. You looked up at me, genuinely intrigued. I don't know how you can be bothered, you said. I loved you for those words, my unknowable daughter, as you stepped out of my studio and down the garden path towards a life that makes your father proud. Very, very tough young woman, my daughter Katie, keeps me honest, tells me what she really thinks, doesn't sugarcoat it, I've got to say. And I would just like to finish, I think, with, well, maybe two poems, and I'm aware I've been sort of talking for quite a while, and it'd be lovely to get Dom to read some of his poetry and actually to see Viv draw. I'm looking forward to this a lot. But before I do, I just want to share two poems. The first one is one I wrote just the other day, and it's about a visitor to my garden. A pheasant has appeared in my garden. In Brighton, in the middle of town. It's obviously a refugee from some shoot out in the Sussex countryside, but it's turned up in my garden, and each day I feed it little sort of, some grain and stuff, and it's still with us. And I wrote a little poem, and this is called Paradise. Paradise, a walled enclosure of Persian kings. The pheasant, tail feathers missing, appeared in the back garden, wide-eyed in its injured robes, like an outraged potentate fleeing a palace revolution. He stepped delicately as a ballet dancer down the garden path as we watched from the kitchen window, stalked by a dusty urban fox, eyed by predatory town cats, flapped at by the impertinent pigeons. Far from the countryside shoots, the pheasant pecked at the seed beneath the bird feeder, stranded in paradise. Each morning we check from the window to see if he's still there. And he is still there. He's winning the battle so far, although quite a few times I've had to rescue him from the fox. So it's a bit of a game of pheasant and fox, as they might say. I'll keep you posted. And finally, I would like to redo a poem, and this is a poem that sort of means a lot to me. And I know that Dom has a poem that means equally a lot to him. And these are both poems that we wrote for our respective brothers. Both Dom and I have lost brothers. My brother Rick died 6 years ago, and this is a poem I wrote in his memory. I can't remember what we talked about. I can't remember what we talked about, but we talked all through that afternoon. The balcony, bright with sunshine behind you as you rocked on that old rocking chair from the Watton sale rooms. I can't remember what we talked about. It's not your absence that fills the pockets of my heart with stones. We were so often far apart, in age, in experience, in geography. Your voice on the other end of a line from Cairo, Istanbul, Kuala Lumpur. But when we talked, you were as close to me as anyone will ever be. Nikose Sikeleli Africa, you loved that anthem. A stone. Banana leaf curry, electrical storm over Penang. A stone. Hospital bed, wires, bleeps, your stubble, your toenail still growing a pieta. Our father's benediction, his hand on your brow as you left us. Stones, stones, stones. But that afternoon in Florence Road, we talked, and we both knew we loved each other, though would never say as much. That memory eases my stone-heavy heart. I can't remember what we talked about. Over to you.
Wow. No, honestly, I think I could leave that in silence, and I think it would be the most profound thing I could do. Those are beautiful readings, and focusing on family at this time seems absolutely right, and it is kind of what I've opted for as well with my readings. Every one of those poems is special to me, but that last one, I'm so glad you read that last one. The first time I heard it gave me the same effect, and thank you. I will be listening to this again and again on the re-record. Gosh, right, okay. So I've got a bunch of poems to read, and most of them are from the book that Viviane and I did together, This Rock, That Rock. But I wanted to start with one that was a commission from the BBC earlier in the year, because it's been a peculiar lockdown for me, with 2 books out, This Rock, That Rock, and Leap Hair Leap, both of which I've been lucky enough to work with amazing illustrators and to indulge myself in what I love most, which is poetry. And I found myself thinking more and more about how poetry kind of connects us more and more when we're apart, and making us notice the things that are around us. So this poem, the BBC asked me to write 2 poems for them during lockdown, and this one was part of their Make a Difference campaign, which was headed up with Ian McMillan, and it's called Seeing. And that wall, and that wall, and that wall, and that, and you didn't realize they had cracks, delicate as a baby's veins, most prominent when the sun remembers it is daytime. Each thread an act of kindness, tiny on its own, like the sound of a gift or a food parcel kissing the step, or the first words you spoke after he had died, before you realized there are people who will listen, people who will reach you, people who will teach you. Those cracks can bring down walls. Those acts of kindness can be calls for change. And that crack, and that crack, and that crack, and that. And our bodies are not built from stone, but made to change, made to heal, made to feel for sun on the skin, food in the stomach, voices in the air, not money in the bank or divisions of sex, race, faith, just tiny acts of kindness, delicate as the first roots you grew after the old world died. So it got me, over lockdown, it got me realizing how it seemed like the previous years working on This Rock, That Rock with Viviane seemed to be preparation for this distance we all felt over the months, and may still be feeling even now. And it's one of the questions I kind of get asked in schools, and about how we can look at this infinite universe and not feel small. And the moon, what, 250,000 miles away, and I look up at it as Chris said earlier, actually, and it gives you a moment of reflection, more than a moment. It gives you space. And I think one thing that I've taken looking again at the book that we've kind of created together is just how much space to reflect on the things that are important really matter. And even though something is far away, it allows you to view it perhaps more clearly than you can when things are right there in your face, kind of thing. So this poem is
Tom?
Is one, yeah.
Sorry, you realize I was going to draw along to your poems.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm going to put you full screen now, Viviane. I'm going to put you full screen. I'll take my face off this. I was watching
to draw the poems.
Right. So I'm going to. This one's called Between You, Me, and the Moon, and I get to remove my face from your faces, which is good. So I will put Viviane on here now, and this poem, this is about me reflecting on the growing distance between me and my son. He's growing up. I've told him he's leaving home soon, and he's 13. It's soon enough, isn't it? And it's making me realise, he's out with his friends at the moment and things like that, and realising that the stuff that we used to do together are changing, and this is between you, me, and the moon. It gets darker later, now that your summer is here, but I watch cool winds carry dandelion embers to your hair, whilst the stars I used to sing stay faded in the air. We sit together less often, and tonight's moon is hard to find, but the old campfire still recalls your bedtime books in the theatre of its flames, whilst the snap of wet wood brings slammed doors to mind. You talk of new planets, as I try to hold to the old, and the light of birthday candles torches intent, and your bike's backlight takes longer to arrive. There's too much space, and yet not enough for all you've become. I cannot keep you with the names of constellations, and yet we talk of everything between you, me, and the moon. That's amazing, Viviane. And we're getting ink as well. Oh, wow.
See,
That's
I'm not
wonderful.
Like, getting the timing right.
The timing is perfect, because now I get to watch you rather than just staring down at the page.
I really like this poem.
I like this poem as well.
And the book
one thing
didn't give it a campfire, you see. And I was just thinking it should really have a campfire. There you go. But actually should probably be more like that, shouldn't it? Nearly done. I'll speed up.
That black ink, Viv, is spectacular.
It helps, doesn't it?
Isn't that beautiful?
That's amazing. We need to do a special edition, full colour images. It'd be fantastic.
It would, wouldn't it? There you go. I think that's
Actually, in all seriousness, one of the things which kept inspiring me was seeing, because you were, whilst I was writing some of these poems, you were working on How to Reach the Moon, Anna and the Crocodile book, and the space rockets that you were drawing with watercolours there were just incredible.
Isn't it lovely, Dom, to just see an image appear out of the sort of blankness of the white page?
It really is. And one of the things that we did when working on the book, actually, which really helped, was, and it changed. I was changing poetry because of seeing the images that grew from Viv's sketchbook, and it was such a collaboration. And I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about this later in more detail, but this thing about illustration and poetry and how it can be complementary, really complementary, is something that absolutely fascinates me. It really does. Right, I'm going to move on to another poem now, and this one is the one that Chris referred to during his final poem, and it's called Brother Moon. And this is another one that kind of this had a different title. I like telling this story actually because it shows how important the collaboration was between me and Viviane, in that it used to have a really long, unwieldy title, which I needed in order to write the poem, because it's about my brother who died. And Sean had muscular dystrophy, and he was severely autistic. And so it had a very long title, which kind of explained the poem to me, but it didn't connect the reader so much. And Viviane once said, "I think that's the wrong title." And I looked at it through her eyes suddenly, and it hit me that this poem should be called Brother Moon, very simply called Brother Moon. And as soon as I cut away all the rest of the title, the dead weight of the title, it just rose into the sky for me, this poem. So this is called Brother Moon. The night after my brother died, I stole the moon, because only the moon could know how it felt to have seas without water, mountains without snow, and a sky without air. He had lived above and beyond. He was a world of his own, affecting each of us. The night after my brother died, I listened to the moon, because only the moon could speak as he spoke, in phases and in the full smile given to those who keep their own time. He knew us well enough, handing out names like an explorer, claiming us as his. The night after my brother died, I hid the moon, because only the moon had stones like bones, shifting beneath a face thinned by dystrophy, but still looking towards our mother. He could not walk. He was too weak for this gravity, but he made our hearts leap. That night, after my brother died, I released the moon, because only the moon could talk to the sun. And without him, the night was dark for everyone. I kept losing my place during that poem because I was watching Viviane draw, and that's incredible. Again,
Viv, fantastic timing.
it was very good time. It was. This feeling of about the moon, and one of the things that I do, it kind of hit me when I'd been talking to a real life space scientist, a man called James Carpenter, who's from the European Space Agency. And we were talking about poetry and about space and about inspiration, and I suddenly realized about how all of space, in a way, these flashy bits, you look at the pictures of the nebula and they're amazing and dramatic, and our moon just seems quiet and beautiful, and almost the first time anybody questioned my interest in space was to say, but it's just the moon, it's just a dull thing that's in the sky. And I explained about how it's the moon that gives us the seasons, the moon that gives us our day. You know, we've got a 24-hour day because the moon is at a certain distance, this quarter of a million miles from us, and it's moving further away, about 3-4 centimeters every year, and it'll eventually get so that our days will be much longer, perhaps 44 hours long. And they used to be back 4 billion years ago, they used to be about 8 hours long. So the moon to me is quiet, and it is nothing much seems to happen with it. So I wrote a poem called Quietly Remarkable, to celebrate this, and to focus on the kind of people who aren't flashy, who don't kind of hog the limelight or make loud noises. But I think this is a kind of really important poem, and one of the ones that came late into the collection, actually, but one which has certainly found its audience of children and adults who kind of identify with it. It's called Quietly Remarkable. You're never first, you're sometimes last, and lessons don't sink in so fast. It feels as though your other mates are quick to speak in class debates, but you're the moon, and that's okay. You're doing fine. You're here to stay, quietly remarkable. You look ahead, but nothing's clear. Every choice is edged with fear. You don't know what you'd like to do. The jobs you see don't feel quite you, but you're the moon, and that's okay. You're doing fine. You're here to stay, quietly remarkable. You're doing good when that one friend turns to you in the end, and you're right there to help them out, to show them what the world's about, because you see it through your eyes, and no one else can be as wise and quietly remarkable, because you're the moon, and that's okay. You're doing fine. You're here to stay, quietly remarkable. Take a moment now to look at that illustration. Gosh.
Viv, I can see a wonderful sort of Tove Jansson feel to that character.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you. I'm mostly muted. Can I just say the cat was chewing my elbow through this? That's why the moon is round. I'm really sorry.
Possibly the cat, you've got the cat to thank for some of that lovely sort of smudginess going on there, from your the sort of the palm of your hand. That works well. I think you're a great double act.
It's good. It's good and dirty, this.
I love it. That's fantastic. Gosh. My final poem for tonight, and if anybody's got any questions for any of us, then please pop them in the comments. I think the comments are working. And this last one, again, tapping into the whole family thing, which seems to be a strong theme for the evening. Is called The Last Man on the Moon. Watch carefully, steal a glance just before the door closes, as your mum or dad takes one last look at your shadow-wrapped face, and know that through you they have walked upon the moon, to memorize every feature, as though this is their last visit. And it is. For tomorrow you will be older, and you might not let them land a kiss upon your lips, or hold the glow of your spirit in their hands. You might not be as easy to reach, or even see, because yes, there will be days when you go dark, but even then, you should know that they will still be there, looking up for the thin crescent of light to appear in their sky, like the opening of a bedroom door. That's amazing. Again, Viviane, I love that.
I love that idea, Dom, of the sort of moonlight almost being like the sort of the light that comes from the opening of a bedroom door. We all remember that from our childhood.
Yes, I mean it really is just a kind of simple image, really, but it's one that I still do. You know, Oliver, when I go and check on him at night, even though these days he's probably awake longer than me, but certainly in the mornings are the best time for a teenager because they're always asleep. So I'll go in at about 5 o'clock when I get up, or 6 o'clock sometimes, and just have a peep and just see him sprawled out there, and it's that kind of, it's kind of special. It is, and it's for me, it's the same as looking up at the stars. These illustrations that we've seen tonight are just incredible. Chris, so you've done a lot. In fact, I'm going to quickly swap screens because I want to show this. Chris will know this one. I'm going to put me full screen now. Hello world. Right. So this book here, Moon Whales, it's the first book of poetry I ever treated myself to. I must have been about 16, 17 maybe. And the illustrations are the first, I think, and it's something I referred to when I was writing this rock, that rock, and the illustrations that obviously Chris did, showed me how illustration. I think I'd only for years afterwards, I only saw one other book, and that was the Edward Lear poems, illustrated by John Vernon Lord. You probably know that, Chris. And but it was a book that suddenly the illustration and poetry they worked so well together that you couldn't. They both did their own thing, so you could appreciate one without the other. But when they were put together, they made the book more than the sum of its parts. And it was something that I was really, really pleased with when we were doing this rock, that rock. That's what was new with what Viviane was doing with our book, and it's why I refer to it as our book, definitely, because it just is.
I mean, that really takes me back, because that was a commission that I got right out of art school. I'd be very interested to know, Viv, when did you graduate from art school?
Oh, good question. I think I got my master's in 2003.
2003. Well, I saw a message on my Facebook feed from your school teacher, who remembers you from the 1980s as a very gifted illustrating, even back then.
Yeah, I mean, all the time. I just wonder which one.
Because, Viv, I'm here to tell you that I graduated when you were maybe about 12. That's when I was graduating from art school in the 1980s. And the first commission I got was with Ted Hughes, which was an amazing thing for me, because I'd studied Ted Hughes's poetry as a schoolboy. And then I actually got to meet this extraordinary sort of hero of mine.
Wow.
And he wrote these poems, Moon Whales, and it was a wonderful collection. And I haven't actually looked at it until, Dom, you held up that book. I'm going to go and have to find it on my shelves somewhere. But it was wonderful, actually, to work on that book, because it was a sort of unified sort of book of poems and pictures, in a sense, a picture book that was a poetry collection. And I think we come back to that now. I think, there are now increasing sort of, there's a tendency towards, words and pictures coming together beautifully. And I think what you and Viv have done with your book is absolutely bringing words and pictures together with equal weight and equal power to make the book itself a rather amazing object.
I think that's important. Yeah, that is really a key thing, isn't it? The equal weighting of it. That it really is, and I think that's that. And this really genuinely comes down to the way you illustrated Moon Whales in 1988. I've just looked at the content at the page. Yeah. So and I would really love. We've seen beautiful editions of the Iron Man, Chris Mould's beautiful edition of the Iron Man coming out. I'd love to see an illustrated The Crow.
Yes.
Because I think that's one collection of his which would be an extraordinary book to illustrate.
I think Chris has done an amazing job with the Iron Man. It's fantastic. Yeah. I actually think that, I would love, maybe, and this could be a commission for Viv, actually, I would love to see a sort of, a sister book to that, of the Iron Woman.
Oh.
I think sort of coming mysteriously out of the sea, to sort of put, let's put the world to rights, I think, in a much more sort of direct way. The Iron Man, he's great. I love him. Iron Woman, that would be really interesting, Viv, don't you think?
Yeah, I agree. She's good and angry, I remember. That's what I remember. I don't know. I'd have to read it.
That's yeah. There's going to be letters going to publishers tomorrow, isn't? I think emails going to publishers definitely.
Well, look, wait, Dom, write that poem and get Viv to do the illustrations.
Definitely. We've had a couple of questions. A question from Annalise Avery saying, what were the, in fact, I can put it on screen, look at this technology. What were the poems that set you on your way? The poems that made your heart sing and your soul want to write poetry too? That question is written like a poem. I really like that. That's very good.
And Annalise is a writer,
Yes.
has got her first book is about to be published. And I met Annalise at her wonderful local library in Suffolk. So it's wonderful to have a question from Annalise. So Annalise, hello to you, and it's lovely to hear from you. And really, good luck with your new book, which sounds absolutely wonderful. So thank you for that question. And I don't know, Dom, if you indulge me, if I may. This is a chance to maybe read a poem that's meant a lot to me.
Yes, of course.
And this one is going back to sort of the time of Edward Lear, but this is Lewis Carroll nonsense poem, and this is Jabberwocky. 'Twas brillig and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome-raths outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jubjub bird, and shun the frumious Bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the manxome foe he sought. So rested he by the tum-tum tree, and stood a while in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock with eyes of flame came whiffling through the tulgey wood and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O frabjous day, calloo, callay, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig and the slithy toads did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome-raths outgrabe. So Annalise, I think that was one of my absolute inspirations. I remember it from school, and it's an invitation. I don't know about you, Viv, but it's an invitation to sort of draw those creatures that you can't quite imagine. You're not quite sure what they look like, but it's a great gift, isn't it, to just sort of go off on a sketchbook sort of adventure and imagine what sort of a mome-rath or a Jabberwock might look like.
Yeah, definitely. Particularly Jabberwock.
Do you have any poems that you want to read or share at all, Viv?
Me?
Yeah. Any ones that either you've done or ones that that meant a lot kind of growing up?
I don't know.
I can give you time to think, because I've got one that definitely. So one of the poets that influenced me, thanks to my A-level English teacher, Peter Birch, he introduced me to E. Cummings, the poems of E. Cummings, and one of many. I think as a man who mastered kind of the eccentricity of words, really, this one is just an absolute joy. It's called Maggie and Millie and Molly and May.
Tom, can I illustrate it and read it?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Classic. Okay, off you go.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And draw.
Maggie and Millie and Molly and May went down to the beach to play one day, and Maggie discovered a shell that sang so sweetly she couldn't remember her troubles, and Millie befriended a stranded star whose rays 5 languid fingers were, and Molly was chased by a horrible thing which raced sideways while blowing bubbles, and May came home with a smooth round stone, as small as a world and as large as a loan. For whatever we lose, like a you or a me, it's always ourselves we find in the sea. And I absolutely love that poem. And it just seems to, it's the music of it, the changes in the way it's written, sometimes the rhyme, sometimes I'm going to stretch out this one line and wrong foot you. And I just love that. It's just childhood in a poem to me, and friendships and family.
You're right. It's also this thing. I think all poetry, I think, really is about observation, but about truth as well. And that notion that you would actually sort of beachcomb, you would go down to the beach and find things, and they would suggest is so truthful, isn't it? You know, the notion of finding the shell, finding the stone that means something to you. We've all done that. In fact, I did that this summer, sort of walking along a beach and just trying to find a particular stone and finding one, putting it in my pocket, and then finding it sort of months later, picking it up and thinking, I remember the stone, I remember where that came from. So I think poetry does that, doesn't it? It distills experiences and it speaks to us. It connects, you know, our experiences with other people's experiences, and does this thing, I think, which is called empathy, you know, where we understand each other through this medium.
Absolutely. And actually, strangely enough, the rock that Viviane drew there is part of your childhood, isn't it, Viviane?
What? The rock? Oh my God.
The rock. That's
that
why we've got the rock on the top. That's the rock, yeah.
The rock that I found that just looked like a planet. Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. I just had a very good rock that looked like I think I still got it. Should check.
And it's that thing, isn't it? I do the same whenever I'm certain times of year. I will know that I will go and pick up a conker on my desk here. I've got a couple of conkers that I pick up because it reminds me of going for walks with Oliver and finding a conker, or him finding conkers and him finding sticks and putting them into my pocket. And I've still got some of the stones that he's put into my pocket as we took walks when he was a toddler. Is that the stones, Viviane?
Yeah, this is my my wick. I think it's full of useful things, and it's got all the rocks. And yeah, that's the one. It's good, isn't it?
These are the things that eventually find their way for me into poems. The detail, and you've done it in your poems tonight, actually, Chris. It's those real details, isn't it? It's the stone, it's the shell, it's all these things that are drawn from memory that are then brought back into a poem.
I loved actually just seeing Viv's hands, you know, be beautifully stained.
Very inked, yes, I'm sorry.
I mean, in any other context, that could be quite disturbing, Viv. You know, if you could look as if you've just sort of gutted a chicken or something. But
it's always pretty bad. I used to do the thing. I used to just like always make sure that I've got like really perfect fingernails and everything whenever I do some drawing, because it's just like you do that when it's like really big on stage.
Yes.
And you just got like God's hands.
Yes.
And it's like they can never be clean enough. It's just not possible.
I'm never going to be a hand model, Viv, so I gave that up a long time ago. So I'm at an even greater disadvantage. You've got very photogenic hands.
They're quite stubby. But yeah, anyway, I've just stopped. Like I don't know, some years ago I just gave up, and I was like, just gonna be inky. It's fine. It's fine.
Oh, wear the ink with pride. I think it's a great look.
I do generally. I do. Yeah.
Viv, I'm going to read one of your poems.
Oh, okay.
And do a little drawing while you read.
Oh, should I do a draw? Should I read it? Should I read
You
one?
read it, and I'll do a little drawing, and you can tell
You
me
should
what you
read
think.
it. You should definitely read it.
Which one do you want? Have you got any? I know that you've seen them. I've got the 3 evening songs here if you want. They're short.
That sounds lovely.
Okay. I'll
Yeah,
try and
they're
not
fine.
do
They're
them.
lovely. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I might do voices. I've never read this out loud.
Voices are good.
Exciting.
Two voices. Yeah.
I can say
They pay an
that
extra amount for them.
2 of these songs I wrote when I was in college, right at the end, and one of them, the last one, later. So, the first one of the 3 evening songs is called What the Cat Sings at the Window. The birds in the trees have feathers on their knees. The trees have leaves all over. The leaves are for falling. The feathers are for fun. The knees are for not falling over. Such is the first of the songs.
A poetic cat.
Which is something that
I love it.
I don't know if you've heard your cat sing this. It sounds different when she does it. It sounds more like, but that's basically what it is. Are you ready for the second song?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I've got a very, very bad connection, so... Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can.
Good. The second song is What the Mouse Sings Behind the Kitchen Wall. Nothing goes, nothing stays. Everything ends well. If it's not good yet, it's not over yet. And that's how you can tell.
They have, Viv, the wisdom of haikus.
They do. They do.
The space between the words that I'm really enjoying. There's great resonance there.
I used to tell that one myself a lot when I moved to London, and everything was very, very big and very, very loud, and I wasn't quite sure about things. And I used to say that one a lot. It reminded me. No, it wasn't reminding me. It was like when I was in college.
Viv, I've had a message through saying
Viv
is a proper poet. She writes about cats. I think
I do.
I think the judgment on tonight's poetry is in. Can we have your third song?
Are you ready for the third one?
Yeah.
Let's not drag this out. They're very short poems.
They're lovely.
Okay,
They're great.
This is the third one because it did need a third one. And this is more about what I've kind of learned since I've been here, locked up in this room, with a view of trees and birds. So it's what the bird sings in the tree. I am here. This is me. Here I am in this tree. Latest news. Have you heard? This is me. I'm a bird.
Honestly, I want a whole book of these songs. I think
I wish I had a nightingale out there, but I'm sorry, it's all magpies. There were like about 12 out there, and I think that's one short of the devil yesterday. Such a noise.
Well, I've got to say, Viv, that there's, your drawing had an echo of Tove Jansson and Moomin, and I think your songs have got an echo of the great Ivor Cutler, one of our great poets. So yes, I think you really should pursue this and do some more.
Right, I think it's time to wrap up now, if that's okay with the two of you.
Yep.
Absolutely, Dom.
Yeah.
last poem, maybe.
Oh, fantastic! Right.
And this is a sort of poem I wrote sort of this a little while ago when I was watching cricket, and I tuned on to Radio 3 to listen to the Radio 4 to listen to the extraordinary cricket commentary. And it was when that extraordinary Headingley Test match that went on forever, and both my brother and my father, who are no longer with us, were great cricket fans. And as I listened to the commentary on the radio of this extraordinary innings, England were going to lose, except for Ben Stokes at the crease, and he batted all through the afternoon, and England won this impossible victory. And this is a poem I wrote. It's called A Communion. You both seemed so close, although you were gone and could not possibly know of Stokes' heroic battle in the Headingley sunshine as the endgame of his innings unfolded. And yet, it seemed, you were both with me as I listened to the ball-by-ball description on the radio, the liturgy of the field placings, and the rolling hymnals of the watching crowd. The 11th man wobbling like an obstinate skittle, polishing his spectacles between overs, refusing to fall. The flailing boundary men as the score tick-ticked to the unimagined outcome. As Stokes raised his bat in weary triumph, you both seemed so close as I remembered your shared love for this game of nuance and inscrutabilities, a communion. And in that moment, I understood.
Gosh. Wow. That's a fantastic poem to end with. Chris, thanks for that. That's, again, that observation of the ordinary is what poetry does. It unites us. That's wonderful. Thanks for that. That's wonderful. Right, everybody, I'm going to say good night to you all, and thanks to everybody who's people in Canada, fantastic. Thanks to both of you for doing this. It's been really wonderful to share poems together and to talk about this wonderful kind of art form that we all love. Thank you very much. I shall speak to you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. It's fantastic to sort of hear your poems, see Viv draw in that dramatic style. And what a lovely thing to do from the privacy of our own sort of rooms, to get together and just talk about things that mean a lot to us. It's been such a pleasure.
That's great. Yeah. Right. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Goodbye, everybody.